This is the Baymont Podcast with Marty Solomon. I'm his co-host, Brent Billings. Today, I am with Reed Dent to discuss the 1995 David Fincher film, Seven. And Reed, we got to share some disclaimers first.
Okay.
First of all, this is truly a bonus episode. You may have seen that in the title. It is not officially part of the Vice and Virtue series. Obviously related in some way. Hopefully obvious.
It's just a nice little appendix.
Yeah. A footnote, really, because I also, well, I'll get to this in a moment, but I don't know exactly when we're going to release this, but I don't want to release it at the end of the series.
As if it's the capstone or something.
Yeah, it's not.
We are not letting David Fincher have the final word.
Yeah, it is totally a bonus episode. This film is not for everyone.
Definitely not.
There's not a lot of direct violence, but there are very graphic depictions of the aftermath of lots of violence.
Extremely.
And very graphic descriptions of the acts of violence. Lots and lots of swearing, a little bit of nudity. If you want to skip this episode, you have complete and total permission. You don't have to feel like, oh, I never finished the Vice and Virtue series. This is not part of the Vice and Virtue series.
So I was only 11 when this movie came out, but it definitely had like a kind of reputation after that, like into like my high school years, where Seven was like this movie that people would like talk about how like awesome it was, and then at the same time they'd be like, but maybe you probably shouldn't watch it, you know, because of just how kind of gruesome it is. And I think we're going to I don't anticipate a lot for just our people who are listening now. Like if you're concerned about us describing in graphic detail the graphic parts of the movie, I don't think we're really going to be getting into that. I don't anticipate getting into that.
That is true.
So if you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to listen to a graphic description, I don't think that should be a problem. We're mostly going to be talking thematically. So yeah, just throw that out there. But yeah, I definitely like this film it was like a little bit of an allure because of how sort of just gruesome or cruel some of the violent acts are in it, but it also is like it has the hook of being about the 7 deadly sins, which we have talked about them as the capital vices through the series, and I've said why I prefer that terminology. We'll probably just end up using deadly sins for this episode because that's the popularized way of talking about it, and this is definitely a piece of popular art that is about it, but it's got that hook about the 7 deadly sins, and so there was something just automatically kind of intriguing about that, like, oh, this is kind of a serial killer murder mystery movie that has also got a religious side to it, and so for those reasons it became, but that being said, like, it is definitely not for everyone for those very same reasons.
Yeah, on the religious note, like I was trying to kind of figure out like what was the context of this movie? Where did this come from? So I was looking at like the screenplay is by this guy, Andrew Kevin Walker, and I could not find any kind of religious connections or associations for him. He was born in Altoona, Pennsylvania, raised in Mechanicsburg, film school at Penn State, and then he moved to New York City in the late 80s. And this movie seemed to come out of like a rising crime situation in New York. But like, there's no, I mean, clearly familiar with, Dante and all the references that come up in this movie with regard to the 7 deadly sins. Same thing with David Fincher. Couldn't find any religious connections for him. His mom was a mental health nurse, which I imagine factored into this somewhat, but not a strong religious tie that I could actually nail down.
Yeah, which, I mean, that makes some sense. There's not a particularly religious gloss, to the 7 deadly sins that are portrayed in the movie, other than just the fact that they are the 7 deadly sins. But the movie does not seem to be trying to make any kind of, well, definitely not any explicitly like religious evaluation of the sins, or like this is not a movie if you're trying to learn about the nature of the sins of gluttony or lust or greed or whatever. Like this movie doesn't have a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out what this movie is trying to say really about anything I've seen it now a couple of times. I mean, I definitely watched it a few times way back in the day. This is the first time I've seen it in a long time. And I was a little bit surprised at how, I guess it's just not very profound. Like if you're looking for an examination of the sins themselves or of sin in general, like this movie is not really trying to say a lot, I don't think.
Yeah. Okay. So one other disclaimer to throw in, and then we'll just fully get into talking about the movie, spoilers and everything.
Okay.
But we are recording this in the wake of Josh Basse's death. I don't actually like we're days later, and it kind of feels weird to record, but also like Josh and Reed and I, whenever we would record, we would talk about movies probably for the same amount of time, if not more than our actual recording session. So it kind of feels like a way to honor Josh in some way. I do, like, he doesn't have a written review about this. He gave it 4 stars. So he likes it somewhat, but it's not 5 stars for him. And he doesn't have a written review. And he saw it before he was, doing Letterboxd full time. And so he just doesn't, I would love to know his thoughts on this, because I wonder, Josh would often surprise me with finding depth of meaning in movies that should not have any meaning at all. But he's also like not afraid to write a scathing review of something. It's just truly a bad movie.
But even his scathing reviews of things, of bad movies, were still extremely thoughtful. And
yes,
yeah, like Josh definitely went layers and layers deep, which probably he would be able to find a lot more to discuss here than I can just on my own.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I hadn't thought about this being a way to honor Josh, but it makes sense what you're saying. Yeah, the last thing that he and I talked about were movies, like with just him and I one-on-one.
Yeah.
It does feel weird. It feels like something he should be here, like on this conversation for sure.
Yeah. This is not the Josh Basse memorial episode.
No.
I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm not saying that that's what this is. I have no idea what we're going to do in that regard.
No, for sure. But it does feel a little bit fitting that like the first thing that you and I are here talking about after his passing is a movie.
Yeah. All right. So with that context set, let's just talk about this movie freely with spoilers and all.
I mean, we're 30 years on from the release date, so you're not supposed to get a spoiler alert at this point, but this is your spoiler alert.
Well, I saw it for the first time only 2.5 years ago.
Really?
I was late to the party.
So, like, David Fincher hasn't made a ton of movies, but his movies are quite well known. He did Fight Club, is probably his most famous movie.
I saw that when it came out.
In 99?
Yeah, in 99. That was a big one for me and my friend group.
Wait, how old were you in 99?
I was 8th grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We should not have been watching that movie.
Yeah. I was a sophomore in high school, so I was not that much older, but this isn't about Fight Club, but yes. Okay. So Fight Club. He also famously did Zodiac.
Haven't seen that one.
The Social Network.
I've seen that.
He did Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Yep.
Oh, Panic Room. He did Panic Room, the Jodie Foster movie.
Haven't seen that.
I have seen that movie, and I didn't realize for a long time that it was a David Fincher movie, but anyway, it makes sense. Gone Girl.
Haven't seen that.
He's got a thing for like just like the darker side of humanity. That's for sure.
Yeah.
There's kind of a cynical way of looking at the world, which maybe makes a movie about the 7 deadly sins like appropriate subject material for him. This was actually only his second movie, second feature-length movie. He did Alien 3, and actually was reading about this. He said he wanted to never make a movie again after making Alien 3 because it's like this huge studio, big production, action sci-fi movie. And if you've seen any of his other movies, you're like, I cannot believe that he directed a movie like that. Well, he sure did. And then he made this after that. Yeah, I think he's one of those guys that you don't go to a David Fincher movie to like be uplifted.
Right.
You maybe go for like I said, a more cynical or just a starker look at the worser parts of human nature. So let me ask you this, Brent, like what is this movie trying to do with the 7 deadly sins? Is it just like sort of a catchy sort of frame to hang a movie on, a detective like thriller movie on? Is there something more going on? Like what are some of the themes that you're picking up? Like what is this movie about for you?
There's a lot of symbolism, definitely with the numbers. There's the 7 sins, obviously, and the crime that unfolds over 7 days. Although it's not a perfect 1-to-1 situation, and we find out like some of these things have been going on for exactly a year before they're uncovered, and
right.
But there's 7 days of crime and 7 days until Somerset retires. There were a few other. I don't know if this is their home precinct, but when they walk into the precinct before John Doe turns himself in, they walk into the 14th precinct.
There's also the time. So the final scene, which is very famous and unfortunately has been memed into oblivion, the what's in the box scene. Unfortunately, it's been memed into oblivion, which is unfortunate because it really is an incredible scene. And the movie has an incredible ending. It's a very, like, if you've seen the movie or that it's a very famous ending. But the time that the box is delivered to the place where they're at is 7:00.
Yeah.
So yeah, the number 7 definitely, which, I don't think Fincher intends religious significance with that symbol.
Yeah, that's what I wonder. And that's what part of what I was trying to like look into their backgrounds. Like, does he like I couldn't find anything at all. And so I can't actually read that meaning into those symbols if it's just
right.
But there's the almost endless rain and everything.
For sure. Always raining. You don't know, by the way, what city they are in is never named.
Yeah. Has to be New York, but I think it was actually shot in LA.
It's intentionally not named.
Right.
I would say. Because it's meant to be a symbol of, I think just it is a symbol of human civilization.
Gotham City.
At large. It's the Gotham City. Yeah, right.
So then I wonder, like, what is the root of why this movie is so beloved? Like, do people have this really negative, dark view of humanity? And they're like, yeah, that's the picture of what I believe. Or is it the thrill of the chase? Is it the mystery? Like, true crime stuff is really popular now, but I don't know that it necessarily was in the 90s.
Well, I think that this is a pioneer in the true crime genre.
Sure.
I think that this actually set a stage for serial killer movies to come, for true crime to come. I do think that, this is kind of like if you think about Blade Runner as the sort of first born in the line of like gritty dystopian sci-fi. 7 is like that, but for the true crime serial killer genre, as far as I can think. It may not be the first ever, but it definitely popularized the whole thing. I mean, I think part of the reason why it's beloved is because of we have a twisted fascination with, like a really morbid fascination with how very inventive the ways of killing are in this movie. I mean, they're horrific. And I keep saying the word gruesome, but they are. And yet there's something that's like, oh, isn't that interesting? Like the way that he decided to punish the guy who he thought had the sin of gluttony or of greed or whatever, we kind of like that.
Yeah. And that was my initial read on it when I saw it the first time, but watching it back for this, I thought more that it had some of the victims were like very specifically targeted as like more public figures. Like the greed victim was like a big attorney who was well known or whatever. But most of them were entirely unknown people. And it seemed like just random. Who is supposed to get anything out of this? Who's actually being punished by the way he's carrying this out. Because the gluttony victim is a total loner, seemingly. He didn't have any kind of relationships or whatever. So it's just a strange, like, I mean, the Mills and Somerset talk about it, like he's preaching in the way he's doing this, or whatever you want to call it. Maybe preaching's not the right word, but I think that's what they say.
Well, somebody asked the question at some point in the movie, is he punishing or is he preaching?
Right.
And they kind of come to they refer to this, his killings get referred to as sermons, which, I think that maybe shows that Fincher has maybe a relatively bleak outlook on religion. I think it's very interesting that so let's think about the characters in this movie. There are two principal characters who are Morgan Freeman's character, Detective Somerset, and Brad Pitt's character, Detective Mills. And then there are two other important characters who get less time, and one of those is John Doe, who is the killer, played by Kevin Spacey. And then Brad Pitt's wife, Tracy is her name?
Tracy, yep.
Played by Gwyneth Paltrow. I mean, she is the only thing that really represents any kind of warmth or softness in the world of this movie.
She wears mostly like white or very light, bright colors.
Well, and I mean, her major, there's an important scene where Morgan Freeman, Somerset, gets invited to dinner. Tracy is the one who gets Mills. What's his first name?
David. She
gets Brad Pitt, her husband David, to basically, she like forces him to invite Morgan Freeman over for dinner so that they can get to know this person that he's working with. And she extends this act of hospitality and kindness. And it is the only thing like that happens in the movie. Or there's like a scene or two where you see David and Tracy just being affectionate with each other. And then other than that, like everything in this world is bleak.
Well, and she is pregnant, we find out at some point.
True.
So she's bringing life into this movie. Everything else is taking life out.
So much taking life out. That's true. I hadn't thought about that. So you got these four characters, and I think maybe Tracy aside, the thing that links these other three characters thematically is this question of like, how do we respond to the darkness, the corruption, the depravity in the world? So let me ask you, Brent, like, how would you characterize Somerset's character? So this is Morgan Freeman. He's the seasoned detective. He's actually, as you already said, he's like 7 days from retiring. He's seen a lot.
He's seen it all.
The first scene of the movie is a murder scene. It's actually not one of John Doe's crime scenes. This is, interestingly, it's just a crime of passion. It's not pre-calculated. It's just a couple that got into a heated argument and there was a murder. And so Morgan Freeman is on the scene. That's where you see him. And then you go from there. But how would you describe Somerset's character? How would you describe his response to the depravity of the world around him?
That scene in particular struck me as he's like fighting for, like, he notices some child artwork on the fridge and he's like, where's the kid? Did the kid see what happened? And everybody else is like, that's not our job. Who cares about that? Even the people he works with are so, and he's not like put off or bothered by any of this. He's not surprised by any of this, but he still has that like concern and care inside of him, even at the end of his career.
Yeah.
I think it would have been super easy for him to just be totally bitter about the whole thing and maybe still care. Like if you confronted him about it, he would care about the kid, but he's not going to be concerned about it. But he was actively concerned about it.
That is interesting. And I actually think it's maybe a helpful sort of like tweak to his character or a layer. But for the most part, I think he comes across as very dispassionate and very like sort of detached from the stuff that's going on in the world all around him. Like I think one of my favorite scenes is early on when we have not yet encountered any of the killings for the deadly sins. he has had his day, dealing with this crime of passion, and he goes home and he's going to bed, and he lays down and he starts a metronome ticking, tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
And he's laying there with his eyes closed, and the score, if you will, the symphony, is not music. It's just all the sounds from the city outside of like people shouting, and there's gunshots and there's sirens, and it's just like the audio of a world that is falling apart. And he kind of resigns himself to it a little bit. It's like, if I give this thing a meter and a tempo,
right,
then I can just fall asleep to it. I think there's a really telling line when he says, I don't think I can continue to live in a place that embraces and nurtures apathy as if it was a virtue. And that, by the way, that might be the only time in the movie that word virtue shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, like, I'm not saying it's better. I'm not saying like escaping is better. And he's like, I sympathize, actually. Apathy, he says, is a solution. It's easier to just lose yourself to drugs or to violence than it is to actually cope. And he says it's easier to just do the wrong thing. It's easier to steal what you want than to earn it. And he says love costs. It takes effort and work. And it seems like he's just kind of beyond that. Like, he's done with that. He's like ready to just throw it in and walk away.
Right. The first couple of murders, he's like he's seeing a pattern to what's going on with the John Doe murders before anybody else is. But he also sees like, oh, this is going to be a bigger case than I want to take on with a few days left in my career. So he's not even interested in being involved in it.
Yeah, he's trying to get off the case because, I mean, he's retiring soon enough. But he's like, I don't want to do this for my last week on the job.
Yeah.
So you have him with this detached, apathetic kind of response to the depravity around him. And then you've got Mills, who shows up, and what's one of the telling things about him is that we discover that he asked to be transferred to this precinct, which we take to be like the worst of the precincts, right? This is like the most violent precinct and the most violent city in the world. And Mills is like, I want to go there. And how would you describe Mills's character?
I mean, the way you say it there, it makes me think of ambition. I don't know if ambition is really the right word. He thinks he can make a difference. He thinks he can change things.
Yeah, not ambition to like necessarily climb the ranks.
Right.
But sort of almost like a bravado, right? That's like, this is as bad as it can get. Like, that's where I want to go because I can do something about that.
I'm going to turn this city around. I'm going to whatever.
Yeah. Like, at some point he accuses Somerset, and Mills says, I don't think you're quitting because you believe these things you say. I think you want to believe them because you're quitting. And you want me to agree with you. You want me to say, yeah, you're right. It's all messed up. We should just all go live in a cabin. And Mills says, but I won't say that. So he's accusing, Somerset of just giving up and then saying these things about the state of everything and how lost it is and how beyond hope, just as a way of justifying his resignation. And Mills is the opposite. He's like, I'm not going to say that. I'm not just going to go live in a log cabin and escape from everything. But then what does he do? Like, he's an interesting character. He's the guy that shows up. It stood out to me that his first day on the job, like, he shows up with 2 coffees. He wants to give one to Somerset, and Somerset's like, I don't want that. And so he he just sets it outside, and then he gets inside and gives his coffee to just another one of like the beat cops who's on the scene.
Yeah.
He's also the guy who there's a stark difference in the intellectual level at which these two people, Somerset and Mills, approach the world. One of the funnier parts of the movie is like Somerset he spends all night in the library when he kind of gets a sense that this is a serial killing and that these are following the line of the 7 deadly sins. He goes to the library and he checks out Dante and he checks out Milton and he checks out Chaucer, and he's just there all night, and he even kind of chastises the security guards, which, by the way, put a pin in that, because I think that there is something interesting going on in like Fincher's approach to the world of like this sinful, depraved world, because they're alongside these really like horrific murders of John Doe. We get snippets throughout, just little quick snippets of like these sins, the same sins, but they're manifest in much smaller, like less audacious ways.
Yeah.
In just the normal, like non-serial killer population. So I want to come back to that.
There was one of the detectives, I guess, we said, well, I'll let you finish your thoughts since we're coming back to it. But I have thoughts on that too.
Okay, yeah. But just as a way of characterizing Mills a little bit further, Somerset, spends all night in the library reading, and then he tells Mills, like, he leaves him a note, and he's like, you need to read these things. And then in the next scene, we see Mills getting the Cliff's Notes delivered to him because he's like, I'm not going to sit around and read this crap, And so, like, while Somerset is resigned and also highly intelligent about all of this, Mills is like the chutzpah guy, He's not thinking too much, but he's just going to get in there and do what he can.
Yeah, and then maybe one of those sins is like the pride of Mills, like trying to pretend that he knows about this stuff because he hides the Cliff Notes in his drawer, kind of turns his back and makes sure Somerset doesn't see him put him in the drawer. Mm-hmm. He brings it up later and he doesn't quite know what he's talking about. So he kind of like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
But the contrast between there's just so many contrasts between these characters. Like we have, while Somerset's in the library, like just going through these books with this quiet determination, like you have Mills at home with the photos and the reports, and he's just like banging his head on the desk, trying to find some sort of detail or clue in this stuff. And then their home environments, you have Somerset, who just has the constant noise and he uses the metronome to deal with it, versus Mills, who has actually a quiet apartment, except for the times when the train comes through and it's just like the loudest, most chaotic sound. So he's getting this like aural whiplash all the time. And even things like Mills has a beer, Somerset asks for wine.
Hold on, I want to go back to this idea about that you just pointed out, the detail that you pointed out about the noise in their apartments, because I did not think about this. But if one of the fundamental questions is like, what is the nature of the world and the nature of people, right? And is it good or is it evil? Is it redeemable or is it beyond all hope? It's interesting to think that in Somerset's world, literally in his apartment, the noise is constant such that you can set the metronome by it.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if that's a way of saying that, like, in his world, this is the baseline, right? This corruption is the way things are all the time, to the point that you almost can make it a part of the background. And again, like you just live with it. But then Mills, in his apartment, it's like an intrusion, right? It's not something that's baseline. It's not there all the time. It's the thing that comes in from outside.
Yeah.
And like literally shakes the place.
Yeah.
That's an interesting for me to think about. How do I characterize the world? And do I see that corruption as something that's just part of the background and there all the time? Or do I see it as an interruption to the way that things actually are meant to be, which is, you would say they are shalomic, right? There's meant to be this state of peace, and then the freight train comes through and disorients things and shakes the glasses and the windows. And
the Genesis 1 versus Genesis 3 baseline of human condition.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then to think about the way then, like if we run with that line of thinking, then just thinking about Mills and thinking about Somerset's very different attitudes toward it. And, it's the good eye, bad eye thing, right? And if you have the bad eye, then I want to be clear, it's not like Somerset is painted as like a bad guy.
Yeah.
I think he's very tired, and I think he wants to just move on.
Yeah, his perspective is completely understandable. I think you can see yourself in either one of them.
And yet it's worth saying here too, okay, maybe I'm into this more than I thought I was. At the end of the movie, what happens like when so again, spoiler alert, what is in the box?
Yeah, we're past that.
What is in the box is Tracy's head.
Which you don't see.
You don't see it. You do not see it. But the package comes and Mills is standing there keeping guard over John Doe. They're out in the middle of an open field. And Somerset goes to receive the box from the delivery guy. And so he opens it.
They're under a bunch of power lines, which I wonder if John Doe set up as like I'm communicating that all the power flows through or around me or whatever. I don't know if that's...
Maybe. Could be.
It's also just an incredibly cool shot. They just have this super long telephoto lens that just crushes all of these power lines together. It's
a very cool shot.
Beautiful shot.
Just on that note, formally, this movie is basically perfect. I mean, the no, seriously, like the photography in the movie, the lighting, oh my gosh. I mean, it is gorgeous, and it's so good. The style is everywhere. The performances are great. Like, form and style, all of that is 10 out of 10. Cannot say how good it is. It's more the thematic stuff that I'm like still wrestling through. And like, do I find this to be very satisfying? Is this like a satisfying conversation about these issues or not?
Right.
Anyway, but so back to Somerset. So what we're saying is that he's the guy who, for him, it seems like the baseline is this is just the way the world is, and it would be easier to just get away from it. It's not really worth redeeming. It's really probably just escaping is what we need to do. And yet, at the end of the movie, when the box comes and it's, Tracy in the box, and Somerset sees this and Mills does not see it. Importantly, he does not know because they're 50 yards away from each other.
And this is the one thing in the movie that actually shocks Somerset. He is not surprised by anything else that happens up to this point.
Correct.
And he opens that box and recoils from it.
Yeah, which I think is a lot owed to the fact that Tracy was the one who reached out to him and made a connection and showed him kindness and warmth.
Yeah.
And he also immediately realizes what this is going to, like, he puts it together very quickly, what John Doe is trying to do. Because the conceit is that John Doe, he is the one who envies, right? And so in his envy, he murders Mills's wife because he wants the life that Mills has, which is like domesticated and settled down and stable and loving. And that in doing that, he is baiting Mills into being the wrath guy, being this, like, committing the sin of wrath by killing John Doe. This is his intention all along, which is part of what makes this so like cerebral and kind of a really twisted sort of genius. But Somerset sees the box and he immediately puts all this together and he knows what's going to happen. And so my point, and what I'm trying to get back to, is what's worth, he's not all just like the world stinks and let's resign ourselves to it, is that he is the one who suddenly very passionately is trying to talk Mills out of doing this thing, right? Out of killing John Doe.
Yeah.
And he's pleading with them, like, please don't do this. Like, you're going to let him win. This isn't the way that it has to be. And so in what is easily the scene where not only does Somerset recoil, but he also is showing more life and more urgency by far than he has had in the entire movie. Here it is because he's trying to prevent the last domino falling into place into total like catastrophe and oblivion in letting the darkness win. And so it's important to point that out for Somerset's character. And that Mills, it's like his passion, his chutzpah is what gets leveraged. Like John Doe is leveraging that against him to play on that and get him to like perpetuate the very sin in the world that Mills wants to try to do something about. And then, of course, spoiler of spoilers, Mills pulls the trigger and kills John Doe. And we are left with a very bleak outlook from the director, from the story. I mean, there's a famous final line of the movie. You hear Morgan Freeman, he quotes a line from... Who's it from?
I don't remember.
It's some famous author. I remember the quote, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." Oh, Hemingway.
Oh, yeah.
So he quotes Hemingway, the very last line of the movie, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." And then he says, and I agree with the second part.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting question, right? Why is the world worth fighting for if it's not a fine place?
Yeah.
I'm asking. I don't know.
Well, so I think of the line, I think this was maybe when they were getting into his apartment or something like that. I can't remember exactly where this fell. But Somerset makes this comment that John Doe is not the devil. He's just a man, which I take to mean something like, even though this is horrific and brutal and calculated and really evil, at the end of the day, this is not the full weight and depiction of evil. This is just a man. There's still a way to turn this around. There's like this small element of, I don't know if I'd quite call it hope, but just achievability.
Yeah.
There's a point in there where it seems like Somerset actually kind of wishes he was more optimistic the way Mills is. He can't quite bring himself to do it most of the time, but he kind of longs for that optimism.
I mean, we hear about Somerset's past. He was he married or was he engaged?
I think it was engaged.
Yeah, he was engaged to a woman, and it was a girlfriend that he pressured her into having an abortion.
Oh, that's right. They were not actually engaged.
And he at one time he did have, some kind of relationship, but he was responsible for ending that relationship.
Well, and Tracy makes that comment when they meet at the diner. She tells him about how she's pregnant, and she's like, how can I bring a child into a world like this?
Oh, yeah.
And he, turns around and explains his story and was like, yeah, I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Yeah. And he tells her, like, if you decide to do this, if you decide to like abort the baby, you need to never tell him. But if you do have the baby, then you need to like basically just spoil it every chance you get. Be the parents who lavish like excessive just abundance and goodness on your kid. I find it interesting that this movie doesn't have a religious character in it. Like, I wonder what it would be like if you wrote a priest somewhere into the movie.
Yeah.
Interestingly, one of the alternative endings that was storyboarded had the final scene playing out in a church where they catch John Doe, and I don't remember all the details of it, but it's in a church, and the church is burning down, or the church burns down at the end of the movie, which is like, pretty on the nose.
Yeah.
But there's no, so you've got, if the question is, what is the response to a depraved world? And you've got Somerset, who is like, just escape it. And you've got Mills, who like unthinkingly is just going to go head first, not really even knowing what he's going to do. Right. But he's just in there. And then you've got John Doe, whose answer is just serial murder. Like, I'm going to punish this and make a spectacle of it. I was like, is there another way? And I guess that way is actually represented in Tracy. I'm glad you brought that up about her, like her power to bring life into the world, that her approach of, inviting somebody over for dinner and her ability to like have a baby is like the only really life-giving force in the whole thing.
Maybe we should talk about the 7 sins themselves. It's all a very stereotypical portrayal of these. I think the Vice and Virtue series kind of speaks against the actual trappings of these sins. Again, the question of like, who's actually being punished here? Like, I was thinking about the prostitute specifically, the lust victim. Like, obviously the prostitute is a victim of that. But I almost feel like the forced perpetrator that John Doe made actually murder her is maybe as much, if not more, of a victim because of the trauma of what he had to do.
I don't know how much we want to get into the depictions of what happens.
Yeah, not necessarily too much, but presumably if you're this far into our episode, you've seen the movie, but we don't necessarily need to make you like rewatch and relive it all if you don't want to. But I don't know, like the gluttony victim, like is force fed for 12 hours until he, whatever. But I was trying to like look around the scene and catch other elements of it. And one of the things that I noticed about that guy's house is that he had 2 TVs stacked on top of each other, which felt like more of a depiction closer to what we talk about in the gluttony episode, where it's not just food. It's like any sort of consumption. And this guy, I think there are lots of reasons why you might have 2 TVs stacked on top of each other to do various things. But I get the impression that this guy was just like, oh, I can't get enough with one show. I need 2 shows. I have 2 eyes. I need 2 shows shoved into my brain at the same time. You know, so there's a little element of that. But for the most part, it was all just the stereotypical stuff. There's no like deeper underlying issue.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really don't think that this if you're wanting to understand something about the nature of any of the particular 7 deadly sins, this is not a movie that's trying to do that. You're not gonna come away with some kind of epiphany about like, oh, that's what gluttony is like, you know.
Although they do reference like St. Francis and stuff. Like it seems like some of the source material was potentially there for them to.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, he spends all night reading Dante in the library, but
yeah, right. It's more of a framework and less about, you know, the underlying issues of the sins.
For sure. What is more, I think, in view, and this is again back to the question of the various characters' responses to like the world around them, is like, I think that John Doe sees himself, he definitely sees him, like he puts himself in the position of judge. And he has judged the sin of the world, the sin of the people, you know. And like, what is the view of God in this movie? Not that I think Fincher is like necessarily setting out to like do some kind of treatise on God explicitly at all. I don't know what he intends. But for us, like people who, you know, believe in God and who just did a whole series on vice and virtue and asked the question, what would be the way that God regards the sin of the world, the sin of gluttony or lust or greed, even just the situations of these various victims, right? You've got some that feel like, yeah, they had succumbed to a vice, but like, is it just because they were terrible people? Or like you said with the prostitute, is she caught somehow up in a system that she has no power over? Like, you know, John Doe doesn't seem super interested in asking all of those questions. The victims become like sort of just a sort of general, a gross symbol for, you know, whatever that sin is. But yeah, like the way that he sees the world, or the way that he sees them, as is it just disgusting and repulsive and deserving of like their fate. And at one point, when he's in the back of the police car, Mills says something to him about innocent people, and he's like, innocent? Is that a joke? And he goes on talking about how they're not innocent and how like he was giving them no less than what they deserved. One of the lines that really stuck with me is the scene after, okay, so when they find the guy who's been chained to the bed for a year, his victim for the sin of sloth. And it's just so cruel the way he's like purposely kept this guy alive just to make him suffer for an entire year. And they find this guy, and it turns out he's still technically alive. Like there's that crazy moment where he like gasps for breath, and it's like super jump scare, you know. And they get him to the hospital, and the detectives are asking the doctor, like, is there any chance that he makes it through this? And the doctor is like, there's no way. Like if you like shined a light in his eyes, like he would die right on the spot or whatever it is he says. But he has this line where he's like being a little bit empathetic towards the victim. He says he's experienced as much pain and suffering as anyone I've encountered. But then he says, and he still has hell to look forward to.
Yeah.
And that line sticks with me because it's like, it feels like Fincher is kind of saying, well, whatever suffering that John Doe can cook up for these people, this is still like no less than what they will get, like when they go to hell for their sin. And that, I don't know, that felt, you know what I'm saying?
I actually read that the other way around.
What do you mean?
Whereas, like, this is so horrific and cruel, and hell is actually going to be better. Like, the punishment of hell is actually going to be a relief.
No, I think when he says he still has hell to look forward to, he's saying that like tongue in cheek, like it's going to get worse for him.
Yeah.
Because hell is worse than this. That is like one of those lines that I just kind of is sort of like a gut check, you know? And it's like, it just always makes me stop and ask again, like, what is the way in which God regards people who are, you know, people who are depraved, people who are sinful, people who are caught in the, you know, circumstances of like sin both in perpetuating it and being victims of it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I will leave that for people to wrestle with on their own.
Well, like one of the things we had in the Vice and Virtue series was the self-examination questions, the self-reflection. And John Doe does not give any opportunity for that sort of work.
Oh, no.
There's no chance at redemption. He has made the final judgment. He is playing God.
Well, interestingly, except for in the case of the woman who is the victim of the Pride killing, because he like mutilates her face and then he gives her the choice. Like, you can either call for help,
True,
but everybody will see you being horribly disfigured, or you can like basically take these sleeping pills. And it's like, really, again, it's so gruesome. It's so sadistic and horrible. And it could be that maybe he's going to kill her anyway, you know, but still, John Doe he's not interested in seeing if people want to do any kind of repentance. He's not interested in really anything other than, I mean, really, it's an ego thing for him, right? At the end of the day, like, because he says, what I've done is going to be puzzled over and studied and followed forever, is what he says in the back of the police car.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, whether or not that's true, whether or not anybody actually in the world of the movie would care or study or follow or puzzle over it forever, that's his motivation, right? Is his ego.
Well, and here we are 30 years later talking about this movie still.
But it's like he probably sees himself a little bit as like a righteous warrior, you know. I'm not going to tolerate sin anymore. I mean, he's got this line. He says, we see a deadly sin on every street corner and every home, and we tolerate it. We tolerate it because it's common, it's trivial. We tolerate it morning, noon, and night. And he says, well, not anymore. I'm setting the example. It's just that his example, which is like, I agree. Like, we do see deadly sins on every street corner, and we tolerate it. And we tolerate so much that is common, or we treat it as common, and we treat it as trivial. And yet what he wants to do about it is something really horrible. And he wants to punish people and make an example, you know, a really horrific one. But like, is there a better response? Like, what ought our response be to a world in which we see a deadly sin on every street corner?
And then one final element of symbolism, as the credits roll, they go in reverse, going down on the screen as if going to hell, perhaps. I don't know.
Oh, really? I didn't even notice that.
I don't know if you feel like we've answered the question of what this movie actually has to say, if anything at all, if it believes anything at all.
I don't know. I mean, I do think that it is like a not very complex painting of some responses to a world that is steeped in deadly sin, but none of them are redemptive. And it is, yeah, it's pretty bleak. And I guess the challenge for me is like, is my conception of God in any way bigger and better than what this movie offers? Or do I have a conception of God, you know, in the way that he wants to deal with these atrocities, like or in whether in what I say I believe about God or in what my life shows I believe about God? Do I have any better picture than what this movie is offering? You know, it doesn't have to be the job of this movie or of David Fincher to like show us the way to redeem the world. It can be enough sometimes for movies just to show us like a world that is broken, This movie just, again, this is like so stylized, so fantastical in its conceit of this serial murder and stuff that it's not very realistic, quote unquote. It's definitely gritty. It's definitely stark, but not, again, necessarily what I would call realistic. Not that it's trying to be, but yeah, I don't know. I think I just I think what I'm gonna be thinking about is Tracy, because this really did not occur to me at all until you said it earlier in our conversation. But in what way does like who Tracy is and what Tracy literally embodies, in what way is that a picture of maybe a better way of dealing with a world that is just so messed up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, perhaps people need a different 7 to look at the world through. And so I have the 7 pantheon of cinema.
Oh.
So I have these listed in order of their ratings. Here's the 7 pantheon. We have 7 Samurai, which is the highest rated of these.
Okay.
Followed by our movie today, 7. And then a little farther down, we have the Magnificent 7. We have the Trial of the Chicago 7. We have 7 Pounds. We have 7 Years in Tibet, also Brad Pitt. 7 Brides for 7 Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. The 7-Year Itch.
All right.
And then my choice for uplifting 7 films, Furious 7. Which I realize is not the same kind of 7. But I just had to include it.
The Fast and Furious 7th movie. You know, it's all about family. It's all about family.
It really is.
Have you seen 7 Samurai?
I have not. I've seen I didn't realize that it was like the original, and then the Magnificent 7 is like a spaghetti Western adaptation of that story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I've seen the Magnificent 7 and then found out that it was a reference to 7 Samurai. Haven't seen that yet.
Have you seen the old Magnificent 7 or the new one?
I'm referring to the old one.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know where the new one ranks. I think it's not as high.
Well, I mean, it's totally a different point of conversation, but 7 Samurai is like one of those where like you watch it now and you kind of take it for granted. You're like, this is okay. But actually you're like, oh, Akira Kurosawa was like inventing ways of doing action movies that nobody had done before and that we all still now use, 70 years later.
Right. Yeah. The only reason I have not seen it yet, because it is very high on my watch list and I think about it a lot, but it is over 3 hours long and it is difficult for me to find a chunk of time to carve out to see it.
Yeah, it's definitely long.
All right. Well, Reed, thanks for talking through this movie with me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that we're definitely not a movie podcast. That's for sure.
No.
But we do like movies. And for me, it's like all in the ether, of my brain when I'm doing Bible teaching stuff. It's like not just the commentaries and the theology books that are like floating around in there, of course. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are like this too, but it's whenever it was 8 months ago when I first started making notes for the Vice and Virtue series, I'm pretty sure that 7 by David Fincher was probably the very first thing that I put on the document of like where my brain was at. And I'm glad that it didn't stop there, because I think if I tried to build a Vice and Virtue series using only David Fincher's 7 as my source material, it would have been not a very good series. But a fun thing to talk about for sure. If anybody made it this far, thanks for hanging with us.
Going into your series, I would have thought that this movie fit perfectly with it and would be like a foundational resource for sure. And now...
Yeah. Turns out it's like the exact opposite of what we need, of what I needed to be able to, make the series happen.
Yeah.
But I'm glad the movie's here. Glad David Fincher is making movies. I like to watch his movies. He's just not our best theologian. That's okay. That's okay.
That is okay. Well, listeners I don't know if we'll have any links for this episode, but you can find details about this podcast and other things at BaymaDiscipleship.com. And I'm sure we'll be back to talk about another movie at some point. Who knows? Not too often, but every once in a while we do want to mix it in. We want to. It's like a peek behind the curtain. Sometime
we do need to find a reason to do the movie Silence, because that is a movie that is theologically rich.
Yep.
I don't just want to shoehorn it in. There's got to be a good reason for it, but there will be someday.
Absolutely. Well, until that time, thank you all for joining us on the Bamwell Podcast. We will talk to you again soon.